the somewhat funny thing is that it would be rare if I didn't have a black t-shirt on.
It feels like this is pretty much the standard CTO dress code, right? So wearing a black t-shirt or a black hoodie.
Depends on the season.
Welcome to another episode of our new season of Beyond Vibe Coding, partnering with Impala Search,
the go-to tech and executive search agency in Germany.
In this podcast, we explore the transformational change in software engineering and knowledge work in general. I'm Sebastian Heidemeyer zu Erpen, CTO at North.io.
And I'm Andre, CTPO at Trusted Jobs. Great to have you back. This time we are talking to Ben Hoskins, a very seasoned tech leader, so more than 25 years industry experience.
Yes, it was like old pals talking about old experiences, but also adapting them to the new world. And we actually discovered many connections between the old and the new world, like Agile, BDD, technical excellence. All of this stuff helps specifically when embracing agentic engineering. And he describes exactly how he's doing this at NewStore, where he currently serves as a CTO. We hope you enjoy the discussion as much as we did. We definitely did. So have a listen. Enjoy. Welcome to the episode, Ben. We're excited to have you. And as usual, we'd like to ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners. Yeah. Would you be so kind to do that?
Yeah.
Right now?
Thank you. Yeah. Ben Hoskins, currently working for NewStore. As CTO, I look after product engineering, design, etc. And I think you asked me a question earlier, Sebastian, as we're warming up, like, what's your career? I haven't really had a career. I've had a series of choices of things that sounded fun. So I worked for the likes of eBay, Wayfair. I've also worked with different size companies, NewStore, for example. WDS back in the day was a smaller company, and I just kind of go where, and I've got a weird sense of what I think fun is, but I go where I think things are fun. That pretty much sums me up.
That's an awesome answer, and I would definitely say the same about myself. So there's no red line. It's just like all over the place, right? Probably also for Andre. That's what drives us, right? The curiosity to always learn something new. Learning curve is super important for me personally, right? The journey for mastery. Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot.
Nevertheless, probably the best answer you could give if someone asks you for your professional career, right? I like the view.
And usually we start after the intro, pretty much, with the status quo. So how are you currently working, be it in your coding? If you do some coding, you probably do, right? But also your other duties. You already mentioned some skills that you use for your managerial work, right? So yeah, all of that is super interesting for us.
So actually, I'm sat in my office right now, which is basically, it's got a ring of desks around it, and they're all full of computers. And the one that is to my left right now is an old Alienware laptop that I've got. I've subsequently installed Ubuntu into. And I have got Tailscale and Tmux on that thing. And I basically use that whenever I'm going anywhere around the planet. And I will leave it on my $100 Claude license generating software. So basically I built, maybe about 15 years ago, I built a thing called Card Planner. And Card Planner is a way of seeing a Kanban board and seeing the same board, whether you're in India or in Germany, so that when you're dragging a card, you can actually see it move in real time in both places. I extended that. I added MCP to it. So I go through a phase of doing a distillation of the specification. That gets into a series of cards. I then pull that over into Allium, which is, it's kind of like behavior-driven development for LLMs. And you describe the specification. It's a little bit of ping-ponging of what the specification looks like. I then use that to generate, and I do it in big chunks. Everyone goes, oh, a test run do only small increments. Doesn't really suit LLMs. So actually I do big chunks of tests, both unit and end-to-end, all read to begin with, using the right types of rules that are in there. So for example, you would say apply boundary value analysis, apply if you're doing something that is multi-tenanted, like the card planner thing that I built, use BOLA. And it then effectively you say use boundary value analysis, and it'll triangulate all of your tests. I then hand that over to the LLM with a set of instructions around architecture and say, go generate me some software. And basically, if it's already got some good references of how you want your target architecture to be, like hexagonal was made for this as an architecture if you're doing something standard, because basically it's got the right level of decoupling. And weirdly enough, I've also learned how to build Flutter apps because of LLMs, because I never used it before, and I just pointed it and said, make me the repo, make me the app, and I've learned how the app actually works through LLM generating it. So it'll run through that, mostly unprompted. There's a couple of things I don't allow it to do. I don't allow it to do all the usual bash stuff that it loves to do, and it's like it's some kind of addiction that it crawls back to going to a grep every time. And I make it use the IntelliJ tools. So basically I hand it the IntelliJ tools via MCP, and I use that to do all the refactoring, etc. automatically. And it pops out working software at the end. And sometimes I look at the source code, I often don't. Now, that's in my own work. That's quite dangerous sometimes. I spotted about 2 months ago that my sub-second super fast front end for this particular app that I was building, because I didn't use any frameworks, right? It was just straight JavaScript. It was taking a second and a half. And when I went to go look at it, it had serialized the whole of the object model, including people's names, emails, phone numbers. And I'm like, there was no test that would have caught that. So every now and again, I go and I do maybe weekly, I will do an architectural review. I'll review what is actually coming out of it. But increasingly, I'm not touching it. So that's my own stuff. So basically, maybe I'll drop in at lunchtime when it's running to see how it's running and how it's carrying on. But fundamentally, nothing. I just let it produce software for me.
That's super interesting. You mentioned a BDD framework that was like adopted to LLMs.
Yeah.
What was the name again?
So it's called Allium. So it's the name for all the different types of onions and garlic, etc. That's a family. So Allium. It's from Juxt, Juxt, the company that built it to begin with. But it's basically a way of describing the behavior of your application, and it's a way of like really precisely like codifying down something that would take multiple loops, and often your LLM would get wrong.
Super interesting. That's why I love these episodes, because I always learn something new.
There's another one I haven't tried yet that is very old that describes language that one of my old mentors from years ago is trying, and I'm going to be giving that a go in the next few weeks as well to see if it does a better job. But I can't remember the life of me the name of it. I'd need to go look at his LinkedIn to find out what it was called.
Yeah. You seem to be very happy with your approach, or very relaxed, right? So you adapted to that.
It works, right? I mean, like one of the things that is really, really startling is that I tried vibe coding to begin with. I really just went, let's just have it generate whatever. That was a hot mess. Like the architecture was all over the shop. It barely did what it was meant to do. It would break frequently. You tried to go back and it would just break. The history would be all over the place. And I tried lots of stuff like that. And then I kind of realized it needs to be in a loop. It needs to have a feedback loop. And that feedback loop is what I've been teaching people for the best part of 25 years, which is give it some failing tests and make the test pass. So all of the agile stuff that I've learned forever is suddenly very applicable, which is kind of fun.
Absolutely. That's something we learn over and over again in our sessions. Like the better your technical excellence, actually, that you have applied before, the better the outcome with the LLMs, right? And also the way you describe it, that you write a big chunk of tests before, which I haven't heard in that detail anywhere before. Super interesting. We'll think about it and try myself. It's pretty much providing the scaffolding that also was there when they tried to, I think, one shot. What have they rebuilt? Bun, I think. No, not Bun, but I think a browser, right? So they, some company used the extensive testing framework of, I don't know, it was Chrome or something, right?
Also did this with, I can't remember which compiler it was, but they rewrote a compiler almost completely from scratch.
The C compiler, I think it was.
Was it? Okay,
yeah. Same thing. You're right. Super extensive test suite, and the LLM could just, or the agent could just work against the test suite. Yeah.
And it's really interesting that things you learned 20 years ago, like everyone, if you're talking to anyone doing test-driven development, they'll talk about triangulation. That is just a lightweight way of saying boundary value analysis or design by contract. And all of those ideas, you're like, you give it those magic words and you say, apply boundary value analysis to the test suite generation. All of a sudden, you get a very, very good specification.
Because we just talking about TDD, have you ever tried semantic anchors? Have you heard about that?
No, what's that?
Semantic anchors. So we had I think, was it a German? Was it a German episode? Okay. Yeah. Then we may need to record that again with Ingo. That's more or less an established term in an LLM, which activates like very precise knowledge. So if you say do TDD according to something. Then the results are pretty they're better, like compared to build a TDD application or build an application following TDD approach. So I was just curious to hear if you made the same observations.
Is very much one of those semantic anchors then, because it switches into a completely different mode.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. For sure. It's like TDD London School that you can avoid to fill up your context with a long description of how exactly you want to do TDD. You say TDD London School and it does it. Or ADRs according to NIGARD is another example. Will do perfect ADRs. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So maybe we need to record. I think it was Ralph, right? He's the inventor of this term.
Yeah, you're right. It was not Ingo. It was Ralph.
Because I guess it's like, hey, that specifically means this particularly small part of the graph. And then it's super contained, and like the references on it will all be like, that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Yeah, and maybe before we go to the main part of the episode, you described your personal coding setup, right? Super interesting. Do you also have like some like specific tools for your managerial setup that you use, or is there also a tech stack that you're already using?
Actually, that's more a case of building a bunch of skills out of this, right? And I was, as I was mentioned earlier, like I built a couple recently, which were think like Ben and write like Ben. And basically what I've done is I've shoveled every piece of communication I've had since I've been in NewStore into it. All of my emails, all my Confluence docs, all my Google docs, all of the Slack messages that I've had. And I made it actually literally go through everything that was in there. And it distilled down the way I think and the way that I communicate. And it's not for the reasons that you think. It's like, actually, I built the Think Like Ben because I'm going to go on vacation in September. I'm going to go off for 3 weeks. And I want to give it to my CEO and say, look, here's a Ben bot. Like, ask it a question to see how it would answer while I'm off. And the write like Ben I did because sometimes when you're using Claude to do architectural analysis, or you're looking particularly at products, or you look the way that you want to place this product, the way that you want to think about it and position in it, it comes back with garbage sometimes, like weird long chain sentences. So I use write like Ben, so it can then come back to me in a language that I understand, and I can instantly understand what it's trying to explain to me in terms of concepts. And it works incredibly well because I guess you match the cognitive so it's quite a smart way of doing it. But I guess one of the things that we're really in work, one of the things that we're really grappling with now in order to actually get down to something that's consistent is that canonical model across the piece, right? So it's a SaaS company that I'm in. So you've got a sales team, you've got a go-to-market team, you've got customer success. You've also then got product engineering, design, support, and like most companies, like the product definition was across multiple places. And one of the things that we're pulling together right now is pulling that into one. And well, of course, we started in knowledge bases because that's where you start, right? So knowledge bases, Henning, great. The guy that looks after design for the organization is great. He's light years ahead of most people when it comes to LLM adoption. And he also runs content because content and design, especially in SaaS companies, are fundamentally the same thing because your product is often a suite of APIs and how the documentation tells you they work. And he's pulled a bunch of that stuff together into like Doc 360, external, internal docs, all through MCP feeds, and realized that got him to a certain level. And now he's built a RAG system. He's built other pieces on top of it. After trialing a couple of tools that do this, he decided, no, we can go build our own. And he's bootstrapped building this to pull the information in from the organization. And the next thing for us is to build that canonical layer of what the product definition actually is. So I would say we're reasonably early on in that journey. And that, more than anything, is going to drive that next level of what we unlock with AI.
And maybe one more question on that. What is the specific artifact that you have in mind that's the outcome? So is it pretty much information that's in this RAG retrievable knowledge base?
So this is what our module structure looks like. This is the modules that you can bind together to have these different product sets. And then on that, then you can base your contracts, you can base your product decisions, you can then test different product ideas, potentially with synthetic personas, right? Because we've been playing with this as well. Like the other piece which is a complete aside, like synthetic personas is really interesting because we're also trying to build. Well, I'm not TanVS exploratory testing automatically through an LLM, which I've been trying to do for the best part of 20 years, by the way. Like, I tried building a framework for this 15 years ago and it was not good enough at all. But so that canonical layer will effectively be something that you put in your RAG that is probably going to be JSON. We don't know yet in terms of structure. Maybe a series of documents.
Yeah, got it. All right. Thanks a lot. Super interesting as usual. And I guess it's time to go to the meat, which is pretty much agentic engineering at NewStore. So you described your own approach already, which probably differs somewhat from how the company currently is working, however, might influence this. Could you share how the company is working, what you're doing there?
Yeah, of course. Like, I think what's interesting generally about adoption is, especially with AI, is that a lot of the early folks that tried stuff, like they brought up Cursor and they tried using Cursor a year and a half, 2 years ago. And then they kind of got bumped with it. They saw it as being a bad copy of Stack Overflow, something that's horribly copied and pasted in. And what happened was, up until literally November last year, people were summarily kind of ignoring it because they thought, oh, this is just not good. And they hadn't realized how much it had actually progressed to the level that it actually is now. And it took me, I had to then I went and built a point of sale system in 4 days. and I went on to an all hands for the product engineering, design, support all hands. And I demoed it to the team and I said, look, if you guys if you're not looking at this, this is what our competition's going to do. Like, you can't sit on this. We can't have it. And then actually that just started to like raise the level a little bit. And I would say we got to level 1, level 2. And at the same time we did that, we started looking at changing the role descriptions so that we could begin to incentivize the right people on the right types of behaviors that we wanted. And it really varies per team, right? So you look at like what we've got around the point of sale and selling team, they often mob together. They often have multiple people with an LLM with them. Some other teams will pair with an LLM individually, share prompts, like share skills, and they're not doing that inter-team yet, right? So they're doing that within each of the domain areas, of which there are 5 larger teams with multiple domains. And I would say that we're starting to get some traction in the guild that we've got. So it's more along the lines of shared prompts at this point, and mostly a couple of different languages. So it's Python and Go. There's a few others in there, and it's partly because of the fact that the teams historically, when I joined the company, there was 15 teams, not 5, and they were all building whatever infrastructure they wanted to build. So actually there's a coming together of that before you really get the benefit of the LLM. But actually, even with that, with people like sharing prompts, sharing skills within teams, they're already ahead, right? So I would say that the bottleneck has already moved into product. And when you look at like historically what happens in product is that when you're doing SaaS, you need to kind of get it right, because then as soon as people start adopting it, that you can't go back and say, no, that was an experiment, sorry. And they've just spent, I don't know, 20, 30 grand with a service integrator to actually make it work on their infrastructure. So like what historically has happened is product folks will be like bringing in, like we're doing this in some areas, like talking to 6, 7 different retailers, getting feedback on the feature that we're looking to build. And then looking at this commercially, looking at all of the different angles before it even reaches the team. And the biggest thing that we're starting to change here is we're saying, okay, now let's get much, much smaller. We've still got the teams looking after the domain, but you've got much, much smaller teams. 1 product, 1 or 2 engineers, and those will cycle out depending upon the mission that you run. And you'll have something end to end to deliver. And actually, I would say that already with this, we're getting much, much further with that, because you got to break that like weeks and weeks of discovery and say, okay, we'll still need to do some of that due diligence, but let's do it while we're building stuff out. So for example, right now we're doing stuff around moving us from being a system of record to a system of intelligence. And we're building a bunch of MCP tools on top of that. But what we're saying is we don't fully know how retailers are going to use that. So we want to get it out to them as early as we possibly can, get that feedback in. And then and then there's 2 ways that you can go. You can either use it to generate reports, or you can really enhance your MCP toolchain so that folks are using the likes of ChatGPT and Claude directly. And basically let's do that based on what the use looks like, which we would never have done before. It would have always been, let's get the pre-testing done with wireframes, etc., and then we will release it, right? And it was a lot more deliberate. I think what's really interesting is that AI as a technology has kind of released you from that, because you don't need a whole team to build stuff now. You need 1 or 2 engineers, and like that part of the code that you thought was going to take months suddenly takes a couple of weeks, and you're no longer bound by saying, oh my god, that's going to take a month or 3 months to rewrite an API. It's going to take a couple of weeks instead, and your bigger problem is how are people actually going to use it. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So we haven't yet. We've started to invest a little bit more on areas that are easier. Like everyone does this, right? So, for example, something happens in support. Well, then you've got all the diagnosis and all of the tool chains, etc., that you need to go through to do that. Let's get MCP tooling around that. I just last week saw something come out of Hack Day that I want to push across the whole of the company. So anything that gets you your time back so that you can then invest is a win in my book. So like things that you've got like just dead work, just use that. Use an AI to do most of that work for you. So you get the time back so you can reinvest it.
Yeah, that's always the most obvious part, right? Where you can invest to read these efficiency gains. And then the second thing is also, actually it's three things, right? One thing is how to internally utilize the tools and like change and adapt your ways of working, right? And second thing is how can you leverage this to get efficiencies across the org. And then third thing is, actually put it into the product and see how you can enhance the product experience with the MCPs that you're building out, right?
But it's not only on the engineering side. You look in the product side, we've had hundreds upon hundreds of product requests come through. You can start pulling that together and you start making personas out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can do pattern matching automatically to see where's the highest signal and whatnot, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like that speeds up as well. And so anything where, so what I'm kind of finding is, sure, it's not the panacea, but any area that you're looking at that was previously labor intensive, you can often apply an LLM of some description into that and suddenly start speeding up. So it goes back to fundamentals and like Goldratt's theory of constraints. So what you need to do is you need to look at your system as a whole to work out what your constraints actually are, and then don't be optimizing continually in engineering if you think that's the right thing to do. Look at everything systemically and say, actually, the bottleneck's here in product, and after you've removed all of that unnecessary stuff that people are doing, then you need to then look at how you can elevate on that bottleneck and start doing some work there to actually get your throughput up. And then it may go back to engineering, or it might be design, or it might be something in support. But the general gist of it is, if you can optimize across the whole of your organization and not just micro optimize, it'll make your teams faster. And that's a fundamental things that I learned as an agile coach years and years and years ago.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's so much into what you've just described, so we need to unpack it a little bit. Maybe starting from the last point, we say, okay, you need to look at the pretty much where the bottlenecks are moving, following the theory of constraints. How do you measure this? Do you have KPIs, or is it more a qualitative thing? So how do you assess which are the next bottlenecks?
I think the super easy way of doing it is, if you're looking at a Kanban board and you see lots of stuff piling up on one part, maybe that's the first place to start. And, people do cumulative flow diagrams, etc. Most of your tool chains that you've got out there will give you that stuff by default. But ultimately, eventually, you kind of get a nose for it, right? Like it's a weird thing to say, but you can have the data and you look at the data, but if it smells like it's slow, it's probably slow, right?
So basically, you're saying you're in exchange with the different parts of the organization, right? And then you get the insights from customer success or wherever there's currently a bottleneck, and then you
exactly.
It. Yeah.
So, and that's absolutely vital that you maintain and you have those really strong relationships with the organization to work out where the bottlenecks potentially are. And sure, everyone's got their queuing systems, they've got their ticketing systems, whatnot, and you can dive into that. And actually, an LLM can help you there as well. But genuinely, the place to start looking, you probably have a nose for it. And the other thing that you want to do is you don't want to bias yourself because you've got a nose for it. You might be proven wrong. And you want to leave yourself open to the fact that you're probably wrong. But still then go in and have a proper look.
How do you approach the fact that, well, not the fact, but the chance that speeding up things will lead to less quality. I think you mentioned earlier, so product is now the bottleneck. I think so too. So what could happen, right, if you now have a faster engineering organization, like you just build everything, right? So like every feature gets built. Not sure whether this is the desired intention. I would say no, but is there something to avoid, like building average stuff?
I think that all depends on how you value user experience. Because I think, like, for me, it's sure the architecture is important. What's much more important is how people are using the thing, right? So
True.
I would say that, yes, you can build lots of stuff with average quality. But again, you need to question whether you actually want to do that or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have anything in place at NewStore to avoid you just building average stuff? So you do any kind of, I don't know, you have some quality metrics in place to ensure product features are well thought through. It fits in the strategy. Yeah,
it's a very hard thing to describe. So I'm going to steal a quote from my head of platform and developer experience, and it's culture eats metrics for breakfast, right? It's like, it's the same as, like, everyone obsessed 3 or 4 years ago about DORA metrics, and I'm like, I don't measure that. Not to begin with. What I want to do is I want to build a team that values that, and then the team want to measure it themselves. And it's the same as, like, quality out to the end user. I want a team that cares about that, because if you don't, they won't. You'll get the same thing on quality. So you can measure it, and we do. We measure things like failure rate. We've got what we're investing more and more in like production and issues there, and we're really focused on resiliency more than anyone else that I know that are building a product similar to ours. Like, and we're at the point where we're pushing more stuff to the device to actually make that resiliency work in a store environment where the Wi-Fi might not always be great. And we do a lot of that work based on data. But ultimately, it's about that touch and that feel and that affinity for the customer. We've had teams working in stores with the retailer so that they can actually feel how that thing is being used and where the problems are. So, like, yeah, we do have measurements, but we've got teams that care. That's probably the best way of describing it. And that kind of is a great counter to then just shipping whatever of, like, intermediate quality that you could. I think basically, if that gate wasn't there, I think it wouldn't be anywhere near as good as what it is. Let's put it like that. Sorry, it's not a sexy answer, but it's
no. I think it's also a hard answer. So I would also tend to say sometimes it's good to slow down, to not just make use of the speech which is there. I think some people call it product taste, right? It needs to fit in, to quote Steve, it needs to fit into a cohesive structure. But
cohesive structure, but I would still like it faster.
Yeah, sure, right. It's in the moment where you realize it fits into that, then full force. I'm a bit worried what we will see in the next years is that just giving the speed, like average products, every product will be able to do everything, and there is no, I don't know. It's just not. Can we say sexy on this podcast, Sebastian?
I just did earlier, so
yeah. And he did, yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting is that now that you can release faster, will people iterate, right? Will people learn? And having a learning organization that will then take those lessons and say, that didn't work, and we're deleting that. That's going to be very interesting, because I think the ones that do are probably the ones that are going to win. But actually, there's potentially a way that you can automate that as well. It's like you you do your metrics, and if something doesn't get traffic, just delete it, delete the software.
I think what we're discussing here is pretty much the initiatification issue, right?
Yeah.
Which is now even sped up by the use of agents. And in the end, it all comes down to, I think you're right there, Ben, to understanding your customers, where they are, and if they're actually happy and capable to like adopt 10 new features every week or every month, or if they need something slower and maybe gradual changes that guide them into a new direction. And there are folks like in both pretty much extremes of the continuum, right? And in the end, you can have and should have measurements, I think, to pretty much have kind of like to see if you're on a healthy path, to see if there's something going out of bounds that you don't see any way other. But the more important signal or channel is actually the relationships with the customers and understanding where they are and how they feel, right?
You can't measure a team to be awesome. It's like somehow that doesn't work, right?
You can't measure the lines of code and then you know that the team is awesome. the old idea of measuring developer productivity, right? So what is it and how do you measure it? And
I produced one when 10 would have done. Right? There you go.
Exactly. Cool. And early on, I think you mentioned also that you changed the roles a little bit in your teams. Did I understand that right?
What's interesting is that the roles change through the nature of AI, right? So when you look at basically domain knowledge used to be king. And now I've got the full software on my machine and I can generate a sequence diagram like instantaneously from it. And I can tell how the software is actually working. And what's also happening is that those mythical full stack pie or T-shaped people that everyone was going after for years, we've kind of got them now, right? So you don't need massive teams of specialist front end, specialist mobile, specialist back end, because genuinely, like as long as you're a decent engineer, you can get a good, like a far across many parts of the stack that you don't actually know or own. So what has happened is it's gone back to what happened at the beginning of XP. The team that I started with in 2003, there was no product, there was no design, there was engineers and there was customers. But in reality, those roles existed. They were just different people in the team picked it up, right? I did a lot of the product work. I did a lot of the design work when I was in that team as well. But you look at now, it's like a lot of the engineering complexity is collapsed. And you see the engineers that are moving over towards product thinking are getting ahead. And product folks that can move into like really good commercial business thinking are also getting ahead. So it's shifting the role through the nature of like that. I would say it's more like a collapse of skill sets that you don't really need to know all those esoteric things as much anymore because your LLM has got the whole history of humanity in it and you can just ask it.
And did you already translate this into role description changes?
We are adding the role description changes. I think they went out in the last one that we did in February, but we did change them. Yeah, we had to. You can keep them the way that they were.
Yeah. So it's now more in the direction of the product engineer, if you wish, right? So someone who
starting to go that way. Yeah. I think more than anything, when you look at role descriptions, they sound like boring things, but they're basically a way of distilling the culture of your organization. Right? They're a way of crystallizing what you value as an org. So we're starting to push more towards that. And we've got a lot of people on the team that are already like that. Because a lot of people that do XP have got that type of thinking anyway.
How do you incentivize like that path? Because at the end, right, this is like still
you promote
people are doing the job, so you need to convince them. Is there any secret sauce you discovered on your journey?
You promote the people that have the values. You give people like you give people the right incentive to say, yeah, you're getting ahead because of that. You will get your next role because of that. That's the best way of doing your incentivization. And just live the values yourself, right? It's like, it's no point in saying, hey, we're doing this, and then you do something different.
And then the follow-up question would be, you mentioned that you went from 15 teams to 5 teams, right?
Yeah.
Five bigger teams. But now it seems like actually you're going to smaller teams that are working on software increments or features, right? But
Yeah.
these are probably
and that was
temporary.
also a progression. So we didn't just do that overnight. So we had like teams that we had to fix some architectural issues from having 15 teams all doing their own thing. So having 5 teams means that when you've got to fix the architectural problems, you don't need to go and ask 3 different teams to do it. You can just do it within your team and you can plan it. But basically, we'd already formed the concept of temporary squads before like we really started adopting AI. And what AI basically did is it made those temporary squads smaller. You don't need as many people in them. Right.
Yes.
So we'd already had cross teams to do these larger initiatives. Because most of the stuff now, because whenever you've done stuff within domain, like at this point, the company's 10, 11 years old. They've already got all of those in-domain things pretty much done, and all of the problems that are left are inter-domain.
Yes, got it. Okay, that's interesting. So then you pretty much have these 5 bigger like domain-oriented teams, right? And then you form temporal squads that are working, or temporary squads that are working on inter-domain issues.
Yes, that's right.
With representatives from the different bigger teams, right?
You have any experience, already learnings? How does it work with cognitive load and stuff like that? Because smaller teams
everyone complains about it as being like, oh, there's too much information overload. But actually, when you do it, it doesn't really, the reality of it isn't that much.
It's
and
more
actually
theory.
Now with LLMs, it's much, much easier. And a part of code that you haven't touched for like a year or two, it'll tell you immediately what it does. We've got tests as well across everything. So
yeah, what I often hear is like you have smaller teams, especially, or like also smaller organizations, but in brownfield environment, that this is a bit unfair, right? For new organizations, it's simple to adapt because, well, like you build your environment differently. So with brownfield approaches, you need to care about like the old world still. And then you often are confronted with the fact that it's still complex, right? It's a lot
we've got that everywhere.
Yeah, but in existing organizations, I think you build software maybe also differently in the past. So you followed way more also approaches to handle cognitive load. Now where AI is taking over the larger part of software engineering, you may also can skip certain architecture patterns and end up with different systems. This is what I'm saying. So what I can share maybe also from our organizations, we run a couple of 100 Lambda functions, probably something you would not do if you build that now with agentic engineering, but nevertheless, this now exists. Someone needs to take care of that. And then you always like get the feedback, well, like, how do you handle that with a smaller organization? Still, the software is like built in the old way.
Yeah, I mean, like we've got all of that. We've got like every possible architecture you can think of. We've got, but like basically the gist of it is that complex system. You still need to invest in proper levels of quality, etc., in order to actually make any effective change.
Thanks, Ben, for giving us this comprehensive overview of how you're working. It was super interesting, and it was great having you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks both. Hopefully speak soon.
To the recap, what stuck with us, Sebastian?
For me, really interesting was his personal setup and how he writes these big chunks of tests first before he starts actually implementing. I will also definitely have a look into the Allium framework that he described. Yeah, really interesting. I definitely will take something away from this. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why we do this podcast, right? These small but very powerful recommendations.
Yes.
So my first takeaway is think like Ben, write like Ben. Need to adapt it to myself. I have also a bunch of skills helping me, and also, well, like trying to, I would not say simulate me, but well, like cover certain parts of my thinking process. But the way he specifically uses this, like very powerful. So really need to think about building like think like Andre, write like Andre.
Absolutely. I did something similar to this in the past, but on a way smaller scope, where I feel like, yeah, the agent has like 80% of my writing style now adopted, but I think I can do better. And this is also something that I will definitely look into.
I can also share, because you shared that I think it's very simple to, well, not very simple, but compared to the think like Ben, write like Ben in that case is way more difficult. So I also tried that myself. I think you need really a ton of documents to really derive the writing style. So at least I would also say I landed at 80%, and 80% is not good enough.
Yes, you always need to like do the final polishing. Yeah, which actually for daily work, I don't mind or even like it that way, because this ensures that I always go over everything, check that the content is really right. But for some purposes, it might be cooler to be closer to the 100%. Anyway, we'll definitely also look into that. Yeah. And then what I also took away was the canonical model that he spoke about of the application. And the ideas, how he wanted to utilize it, are also quite interesting. Would love to hear then the outcome of this. So what he described was that they put in all the informations about the application, or the software, basically, the platform. And for example, in order to test new feature ideas via specific personas against this canonical model, he wants to utilize it, which is kind of interesting. And also the holy grail, basically, to automate exploratory testing, which in theory actually should be possible now. And I heard someone else do something similar in that, or maybe we even had someone on one of the episodes who described that he's also asking, after every implementation, the agent to use the browser and click through all the newly implemented features and basically do an exploratory test. So that's really interesting. And I think that that's the holy grail. Probably we're getting there.
What I also liked looking back is the discussion on product taste. I think at the end we can summarize it there, or enchetification, to put it the other way around. Like using the new gain speed right. So not just implementing everything, but accelerating testing, so to say, or like iterating. Also one of the things you mentioned in the intro. So like making use of the things we always looked for, right? So continuous improvement, and not just like now building every feature which a certain customer may request it.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And then last thing that I took away was the temporary squats. This was something that every leader wanted for ages, I think. And in the past was super hard to do this. Also, you made the point, due to the cognitive load, right? Context switching always, which is now probably getting way easier because you have this agent by your side who can help you get up to speed and switch context way easier by giving you exactly the context that you need when you enter a new topic. And this reminded me of our episode with Bastian from the Getaway Group, who described exactly the same approach. So also curious to see if that works and how this works out for NewStore and also for the Getaway Group.
Yeah, a good reminder that we need to invite both, maybe half a year or 9 months, to see how things are going.
Yes. Yes, and with that, I think we have it. And thanks all for tuning in again, and see you
Soon.
next week. Bye-bye. The Beyond Vibe Coding podcast is a project by Sebastian Heidemeyer zu Erpen and André Neubauer, partnering with Impala Search. The content is created by us and our guests.
Join the discussion on LinkedIn or visit our website where we publish all episodes. For questions and inquiries, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. Thank you for your time and see you in the next episode.